Jon Singer is a crazy motherfucker.
I disagree, but I've been told.
You have 60 days to close a transaction.
Fuck it. You guys buy Spirit.
$350 million risk.
I bet on myself, but I bet on my team. It was betting on everybody.
Welcome to Game Recognizes Game, brought to you by AposHealth. Well, a wise man once said, there's no better bet than to bet on yourself. But sometimes the stakes are so high, you got to push all those chips in and bet it all, because if you don't, someone else will. And that's exactly what our next guest did. Mr. Jon Singer, who, as an accomplished music executive, well, he became the chief operating officer of the Spirit Music Group. And then he had a chance to buy the company. But here was the catch. He only had 60 days. And if he didn't do it, he would just remain a worker bee. But guess what? He did it, took the chance. Even his own bankers called him one crazy motherfucker. Well, guess what? Today, as chairman and CEO of the Spirit Music Group, his music catalog is now approaching 10 figures and one of the most valuable music catalogs in the business. Yeah. Attaboy. Game recognizes Mr. Jon Singer.
You know, one of the honors I have, and when I say game recognizes game, is we profile folks at the top of their game, but sometimes we get the opportunity to talk to folks who are changing the game. And today we have exactly that. Mr. Jon Singer, what is he changing? Changing the music industry. Something that is part of the DNA of my life is music, and I'm so honored to have Jon Singer. Jon Singer is the chairman of the Spirit Music Group and managing partner of the Lyric Capital. Jon, we're going to go all over the place here, man.
Let's
We've
go.
been friends a long time.
Let's go.
I'm going to give you a quote,
Uh-oh.
and we're going to go from there.
I have a feeling I know what that quote is.
Jon Singer is a crazy motherfucker. Is there any truth to that?
I've been told. I disagree, but I've been told.
Where did that come from? I heard, here's a story I heard. You correct me if I'm wrong. I heard that you chose from being a worker bee, and yes, you were CFO of Spirit Music Group, and you realized that a private equity firm that did own you and who you work for as well, you've kind of figured that at some point they may want to unload Spirit Music Group. Is that accurate?
Mm-hmm.
And then one day over a drink, you said, you know what, I'm going to buy it? Is that the story?
It's funny, too, because the crazy motherfucker came from a conversation you and I had back then.
Did I call you that? Do I get credit?
No. Somebody
'Cause
called
he
it
is,
me and
by
I
the way,
told you.
crazy motherfucker.
And am I allowed to curse? I don't even
Yes,
know.
you are.
Okay.
By
But
the way, I started the show like that.
I don't think it was quoted anywhere in the press that I am, but maybe it was. But
Oh, it was.
oh, it was.
It was. On the front page of an article, but I'll show you that later.
Oh my God. Okay. No, because I remember like when we got it all, and we'll start at the end and come back to the beginning. We're done. And we get this crazy transaction completed, game changer, by far. And afterwards, and it was really quick too. It happened in like 2 months. Like, it was like whirlwind. And afterwards, we had a closing dinner with our bankers who helped us get it done. And they were making toast, and one of the lead bankers gets up and he looks at me. I'll never forget. He goes, "Jon Singer, I got to say, you're a crazy motherfucker like, to even think about doing this and then pulling it off." So it's true. I've been told. I didn't think about it till.
Yeah, but we got to go back to why that is, right? Because you were CFO of Spirit Music Group. You saw the opportunity. And the opportunity was, I'm going to bet on myself because this is my shot.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to take advantage of my shot, right? And the partners at the private equity group said to you, listen, Jon, you're running our company. We can't let you take the eye off the ball, okay? But they gave you a little window.
Mm-hmm.
They said 60 days. You have 60 days to close the transaction or you got to get back to work. All right, put 60 days on the clock. What the hell does that feel like? That's bananas.
It was, you know how it is. Like when you have an opportunity like that, you get one shot, right? and you don't even realize it. Like it just, you have this opportunity, you realize it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. Yes, you have 60 days, but you don't think, it didn't feel like 60 days, of course. I don't know if it felt longer or shorter, but we just ran, we went, and I'll never forget too, when this went down, and we're in the middle, we're gonna have to come back a little bit. And we have an agreed upon deal, what we thought, with Pegasus. And we're waiting.
And who's Pegasus?
Pegasus is the private equity owner that sold us.
Got it.
Spirit.
So you had a deal in principle.
Yeah, but now we needed to get into exclusivity and sign in a letter of intent and then get going, with the 60 days. And me and my business partner, Ross, and our team, we were waiting for Pegasus to sign this LOI. And everybody's nervous, everybody's anxious. And I said, guys, and it was late. It was probably like 6, 7 o'clock at night. I said, guys, screw this. We're going to the bar and we're going to wait there. So we went crosstown to some steakhouse and we ordered drinks. And who's there? You.
I remember that. Wow.
It was out of nowhere. Like, this is like an intense moment in my life. We're dying to get this thing signed. And of anybody in the world who could calm me down and so excited to see, it was you. Wow. You were going to a concert, I think. And I said, Marty, we're sitting here waiting to hopefully get an email with this thing signed.
That's amazing.
And you're like, you're pumped, you're pumping, you're meeting the team, you're pumping everybody up. And then all of a sudden we get the email and shit hit the fan.
I remember we brought around the drinks.
That was the initial celebration, the premature celebration.
I can't believe you reminded me of that story. Thank you, man. It makes me feel, because I'm like one of your biggest fans, and when that happened, and I remember like in weeks leading up to that, you were fucking stressed. You would just, and I was always worried about you, right? You okay, man? You okay? And you're like, oh, I can't talk about it. And at the end of the day, it's been a few years now, right? It's been almost 7 years now.
We kicked off in end of 2018. So 7 years, yeah.
7 years. And have you ever thought back that you bet it all on yourself? Because I'm thinking to myself as I'm learning more and more, and obviously we're friends in it, but 60 days, I didn't know about 60 days. What were you going to do if it didn't happen after 60 days? Go back to work?
I'd figure it out. But, I bet on myself, but I bet on my team. Like I have the best team in the world.
Yeah.
And it's not just me, it's the whole people around me, behind me. It's my partner Ross, it's the people at Lyric, it's the people at the music company Spirit. It was betting on everybody, but we just knew it. Like it was, I'll never forget, like before that happened, we were actually going to do another structure with Pegasus Capital. And it was going to be kind of like what we did today, but different, not as, great as I think we have it today, but it's still going to be a good opportunity. And it fell apart at the 1 yard line. Okay. And I'll never forget, Rona, my wife, says to me, like Ross and I went to the bar after it fell apart. We're having a few martinis. I call up Rona and I'm like, yeah, Pegasus just pulled out. And she goes, fuck it, you guys buy Spirit,
That's fucking awesome.
And Ross and I are like, yeah, let's buy Spirit, and that's kind of how it all started.
You said, just fuck it.
Fuck it. It was, you got to take risks. We know that. Like if you don't take risks in life, where are you going to go, So it was definitely a risk, but.
Well, John, it's a $350 million risk.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. It's not my money, of course.
Right,
I wish I was worth $350 million, maybe one day. But it was a risk. It was a risk to get it across the line and get it done. And there was a little bit of reputation involved, that you had to worry about. But
sure.
But yeah, we just went at it.
Two things I can't think. I'm so proud of the team. Not even knowing the team, but you essentially went to war and you knew you had the army behind you. Like you just knew.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the team, because you have all these different people in place. They all do their job, whatever their job is. Mm-hmm. And if they all do their job, right, at the best of their ability, you got every shot.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like I said, I have two companies. Lyric Capital Group is the private equity that Ross and I started at that moment in time to raise money to buy Spirit from Pegasus.
Yeah.
And at the same time, so that's like a bunch of private equity investment professionals, right? And then you have Spirit Music Group, which is the company that I was running that we bought. That's the greatest music professionals, in the business. So you need both in this situation to work. The folks at Pegasus, the folks at Lyric were the ones
Private equity group,
who had to do all the analysis.
And they own Spirit.
And Ross, my business partner, is a genius when it comes to structuring, structuring the deals out and getting that across the line. Buying Spirit is step one, a huge, massive step. But then once we buy Spirit or any music catalog, then we hand it over to Spirit Music Group. And then it's on that team to make sure that we're properly looking after the music, monetizing the music, creating value, and looking after our clients.
Sure.
So it's a 1-2 punch that I'm really proud of.
Such an opportunity for you to also nurture, mentor artists, right? The actual musicians themselves, songwriters, about the industry. Right, because you talk about often to me how you love taking care of that musician, right? That songwriter, and to do that, yes, you're on the business side, they're on the creative side, right? How do you bridge that gap? Because I got to believe some artists are like, I don't want to talk to them.
So that is an issue in our industry today, because the financial community has now realized music royalties are a real asset class. Just like healthcare royalties, and they've invaded, right? And they're all in there, and they just want to buy music royalties. They want to buy a revenue stream, and they want to sell it. And so there is a perception out there from talent that these guys are just number guys, like I'm a creator. For me, though, I've been in the music business for 30 years, right? Like I started in 1997 at Island Records. At that time, the founder of Island, Chris Blackwell, who
he was still there?
He was still there with Bob Marley and Bob Marley, U2, Cranberries. I started there. I got a real good taste of the music business.
What did he teach you? Because Chris Blackwell. I mean, you mentioned that name in the music industry.
Just being, I was so young, but just being around him, you just learned about the art of the deal. You want to talk about it, a guy like that. I mean, he cut so many amazing deals. I even went to work for his company for a short period of time in between Universals. I left and came back. His passion for the music is
and the artist.
He is an artist, even though he's not playing a guitar or playing the drums. He's an artist. The artists love him. And he's an amazing businessman. I mean, outside of music, he had hotels in South Beach in the Bahamas, and Jamaica, of course. So I didn't know him that well because I was a young guy, but I got a taste of him, which is great, And then I'm gonna not go too into the weeds, but Island became...
We got the time. Let's go in the weeds, baby.
No, I was at Island Records for a couple years. I'm a young guy, came out of public accounting, But I was like...
You are the coolest accountant I've ever met, by the way.
It was never a career.
Fucking crazy motherfucker. That's
public accounting was my MBA. That's what that was all about. I couldn't have learned more about business than being in public accounting for a handful of years. But I got to mix numbers and music was the greatest decision of my life, Yeah. So... at Island Records, dealing with my...
Stop 1 second there.
Yeah.
Numbers and music, greatest decision of your life. Mm-hmm. Were they both passions? Because I know music is just in your soul.
Music was a passion for sure, right? I'm not a musician, but I grew up listening to music, going to concerts, jam bands, all kinds of stuff. Numbers, I wouldn't say was a passion, but I enjoyed them. I was not a good student. In high school, my parents are public school teachers, and I was one of the worst students because I just didn't care about it. It didn't interest me a lot of the classes. But when it came to numbers...
it just doesn't matter, those grades.
Right. Yeah. When it comes to numbers, I was focused and I enjoyed it, So I enjoy numbers. I enjoy calculations. I enjoy, kind of just thinking about numbers in my head. Yeah. I enjoyed working with spreadsheets and all of that. But then my passion one of my passions is music. So yeah, so combining it was great, you know?
Have you ever thought about and reflected that you really are changing the game? Because you came from the recorded side of the business, right?
Right.
The recorded music, and then went to the publishing side. Explain to us really what the difference is, because people don't understand what music publishing is and how important it is.
Yeah. You know, when I was at Island Records, could I continue and explain that along the way?
Yeah, of course.
And cut
Let's
me
go.
off if I go on too long.
But you know, cut you off,
when I
ever.
joined Island Records, I'm on the label side. Okay, I'm not a publisher, I'm a label. And that means that, you know, Island Records goes and signs U2 to a contract to record albums for them. And Island Records U2 is responsible for making music with the help of creative people from Island, and then delivering music. And then the people at Island's job is to take that music and sell it, bring it to market it, promote it, and make them who they are today, right?
Yeah.
And so the label side is about recording artists and marketing, right?
You guys listening? Because this is so important to understand how the structure and the different layers of the industry.
But now, when an artist performs a song, they need a song. Some artists write songs, some artists don't write songs, right? But they need to find songs to record, and that's where the publisher comes in. You know, and that's what Spirit is, a publisher. The publishers go and they sign songwriters, like the labels sign artists, and then they help the songwriters collaborate with other songwriters, write songs, and once the songs are written, the publisher's responsibility is to sell that song to an artist to perform it. So, you know, U2 probably writes all their own songs anyway.
A lot of artists write their own songs.
But they also have publishers too who help them write the songs. And then the publisher goes and gets that song cut by hopefully a big artist, a rising star. And then once that song is cut, it's the publisher's job, like the label's job was to market and promote it and get it, on the radio and get it out there, in on playlists and everything. It's the publisher's job then to collect the money, but also help promote it by getting it placed into a commercial or a television show or a film.
Sure.
And all kinds of things. YouTube, make sure you're getting paid from YouTube and promote it there.
Yeah.
So, but the publisher's job is to make sure that the songs are being properly monetized.
You talk about relationships, and that's something that's a common theme here on Game Recognizes Game, where you came from the record side of the business, the recording side, now you're in the publishing side, and it's all about relationships. Because you're saying now at Spirit, you need to have tremendous relationships with the label side, right? And I got to believe you having that history on the label side that really helps bridge some of those gaps that might happen with all the bullshit that can happen dealing with contracts. And
it definitely helps, having those relationships, because not only at Spirit and Lyric are we signing new talent to write new songs, we're also acquiring catalogs. We acquire big catalogs, small catalogs in the middle. And a lot of the times we need the labels to cooperate with us in order to get paid properly, right? So it's great to call them up. And then also, if we want to try to get songs cut, we have relationships with the major, with the labels to help say, hey, we got this great song that we think is great for Blake Shelton,
Yeah.
And here it is, and somebody has a relationship over there with Blake Shelton's A&R guy to hopefully get that song cut. So it definitely comes in handy.
It's challenging for sure. Now,
Competitive.
I can imagine. Now, you are so proud of the catalog that you have. I think it's about 75,000 songs, and I love naming some of the names in your catalog. Eminem, Jay-Z, Taylor Swift, Frank Sinatra, Elvis Presley, Madonna. I mean, you see the names that's got to be mind-boggling that you own a percentage of some of that music that is iconic.
Yeah, I mean, the Spirit catalog it's an amazing catalog. Now let's be straight. I don't have a deal with Madonna or I don't have a deal with Eminem. That's the beauty of owning songs and having songwriters. So if I have Billy Squier is a client of ours, okay? And Billy Squier wrote a song back in the 80s that Eminem sampled in one of his songs.
Yeah.
And because of that, Billy Squier now owns a piece of Eminem's song, right?
Yeah.
That we represent and we collect on behalf of Billy. So that's, like when I was on the label side and I went in and we put out an album by, Melissa Etheridge, right? That was it. Like, if Melissa did well, we did well. And if that one album didn't do well, okay. She always did well anyway.
Yeah.
But like on the publishing side, we have a little of everything. Like all your eggs are in one basket on the label side. The publisher, I could have we once had a writer named Johnny McDade. Nobody's ever heard of Johnny McDade.
Johnny McDade.
Johnny McDade.
Tell us about Johnny.
Johnny McDade, amazing human being, great person, amazing talent. He's in the band Snow Patrol, okay? But he's written songs for Ed Sheeran, Shape of You he wrote. He wrote songs for Alicia Keys. He wrote songs for Tim McGraw. And now when we signed him at that time, we had songs with all these artists. So now it's more diversified, you don't have all your eggs in one basket, and you could have a lot of hits going on at one time, So that's one of the things I love about publishing.
Almost in industries and in business in general, you talk about cross-pollination and maximizing the synergies in business. And that's exactly what you described, right?
Sure.
I mean, all the different genres, all the different types of artists, all the different, the age demographics of all the different songs, that's crazy.
Yeah.
75,000 songs. That's so what's the goal? Do we have a goal?
So
I heard some, hold on. I heard the quote. I might be able to read it. There it is. My goal, by the way, this is you talking. My goal is to have 250,000 songs and have Spirit worth $1 billion.
So that's old.
Ooh,
That's
I like
stale.
that.
That's stale.
That's stale.
Yeah.
Okay.
So-
Note to self-staff to give me stale information.
So that's from probably like 2019.
I will take that quote and make it stale any day because that's a
Right.
hell of a quote.
So the funny thing about that quote is that was in 2019, and I guess I didn't achieve one, but I achieved the other.
Okay.
And the one that you wouldn't want to achieve of the two is the number of songs. The less songs you have, the better. It's easier to manage, right?
Okay.
So I don't know. We probably have a little over 100,000 songs now. As far as the value of that, it's probably closer to 2 billion right now and growing. So we came in.
Hold on, I'm going to edit the quote.
We came in less than 250,000, but we exceeded $1 billion, which is exactly what you want.
That's just fantastic.
Yeah.
That's just fantastic. Let's go back to growing up, New Jersey, public school teachers as parents. Tell me about them. Tell me about what you learned from them that's carried you this whole time.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I'm a very fortunate guy with my parents, and they still live in the house that I grew up in Marlboro, New Jersey. Still go out there many times a month to see them. It was a great childhood. I mean,
Why?
they were just, the love was incredible. Like my father's the coolest guy you're gonna meet. Like you and I could go sit down my father today, and have a beer with him and just be fascinated. Like
That's awesome.
He's a really smart guy. He was a history teacher, retired history teacher, and he's funny. He's got good stories and he's smart. And when I have a question, what's going on in this crazy world, he's the guy I go to, and he'll explain it to me. My mother is just like everybody loves Rita. That's it. I mean, all my friends growing up were like, Rita, we love Rita,
Great.
They would love come to the house and hang out with Rita. And to this day, everybody loves Rita. She's the kindest, most outgoing person you're ever going to meet. And they raised me, I was a tough one. I was the youngest of three, and I was probably the toughest on their hands. I was the one who was a little bit of a rebel. But they were also very strict. So
Well, you said you weren't a great student.
they kicked my ass. Oh, I mean, the old joke was we had this wooden table in the kitchen table, and every night, and my brother and sister would laugh to this day. My mother would scream down at like 6 o'clock, John, come down and we're gonna do a lesson. And I'm like, no, I don't want to. I have to. And she would come down, she'd bang on that table, and she would scream half the time because I wasn't paying attention.
What was the lesson? What kind of lesson?
I'm saying
like a subject matter,
anything that was going on at school at that moment. She,
Oh, because she was a teacher.
She was a teacher.
Of course.
So, and I wasn't very good at paying attention in school. So we would sit at that wooden table, and they would hear screaming for an hour. But
I love that.
all that, thanks to my mom, it paid off, because she kept me focused. I don't know where I'd be without her,
The moniker of the wood table, the foundation, right, of your life. Another theme that comes up a lot in folks that have achieved greatness and are at the top of their game is the concept of kindness, and what a seed we can plant in our children, to just be kind.
Yeah.
Right. And and I've known you for, 20 some odd years now. And that's something that is so evident, it's just the kindness with the way you interact with everybody. I'm sure in business and coming to terms when I'm sure, balancing issues, that can be real difficult. I mean, you talked about in your world, business creativity every day. And, I am working with both, business people and creatives all the time. And I find it fascinating because they're both using two different sides of the brain. And we got to find that middle ground. Mm-hmm. And at, being chairman, running this ship, with this great army you've created, right? This incredible team. How do you help them balance the business and creativity?
I mean, culture is key, right? It comes down to culture. And, one thing that you're born with, that your parents instill in you, is something that you don't realize. I realize empathy is the word that comes to my mind. Not everybody has it. I didn't know that. Up until recently, by the way. I thought that was just human, right?
It is not.
Right,
unfortunately.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
And you don't realize how fortunate you are to have it. And I thank my parents for that.
Yeah.
Because yes, you're born with it, it's in your DNA, but you need parents to really teach it to you and bring it out in you.
Yeah.
And that's something that I definitely, culture is key. I'm very sensitive to people, I'm
I guess in the music industry, really a tremendous amount of different cultures.
There is, yeah. and interesting people, but my thing in life is it's family first, and then it's business. But you always got to make sure your family's good. You can't do good in business if you can't get your family situation.
That's a theme.
And I instill that in people who work for me. You got something going on in your home, go. Somebody just had surgery, take 3-4 months off, get healthy. Be with your family, and then come back when you're ready to go.
Yeah.
And that's really important. You can't just keep pounding and pounding. We're tough, and people work really hard, but you also have to be human. And it's really important in order to be successful.
Interesting. The answer to that, how do you balance creativity in business, is being human. I mean, that's powerful, man. That's powerful stuff. Your parents gave you love. They gave you kindness. They gave you the seed of empathy, right? That has carried you forward. Now, what was your dad's reaction or your mom's reaction when you said, I'm not going to be an accountant anymore. I'm going to go into the music industry?
Back then, they were there was some uncertainty, but they were excited. They were definitely excited for me.
They didn't say, you're crazy?
At times,
in their own special way?
To this day, they still say things I'm doing. Some of them are crazy, but they thought, okay, listen, my parents are supportive of whatever I do. They give me good advice about it, but no, they were definitely excited for me. There were some funny things like when Island Records, when it was owned by Polygram at the time, and Universal bought Polygram, it became Island Def Jam, right?
Yeah.
And then it was
a
very different culture. It was wild, It was, now you talk about a lot of different personalities, and it was.
I bet you some of those parties were legendary.
Legendary. There was some fun times, interesting times, my father's like, you're getting into Def Jam. I'm like, yeah. He's like, Def Jam. I'm like, yeah.
So at that point, you had LL, right? You had
the best.
You had Beastie Boys. You had
DMX.
Run DMC, DMX. Oh my God,
that's amazing.
That's tremendous.
Jay-Z.
Yeah, 100%. That's fantastic. And let's talk about that now, because the journey of acquiring a catalog is no easy, accomplishment. And you've had some tremendous stories. I remember a great story that I like reminding you of. So a few years back, I want to say 2017, 2018, summertime, and I'm hanging out in my backyard, just chilling out. I get a call from you, it might have been a text, and you said, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Nothing," right? He goes, "Come over for a beer." You said, "Come over for a beer." I'm like, "Oh, you're just bored." Whatever. You live down the road from me. I went to your house, handed me a bottle of beer, and you said, "Okay, now listen to this." And you played Taylor Swift's "Look What You've Made Me Do," right?
Yep.
I'm like, "Are we really hanging out listening to Taylor Swift?" He goes, "No, listen." I'm like, "Yeah, she just released an album. That's the first record off the album, and it's like number one, right?" He goes, "Now let's listen to the backbeat." That's what he said. "Let's listen to the backbeat." And it was like, doom, 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 doom. He goes, and John asked me, "What does that sound like?" "That sounds like I'm too sexy for my shirt."
Yeah, you're
too
good.
sexy for. And I'm like, "That's right," said Fred. He goes, "That's right." And you were, first of all, you were very proud of me that I knew that.
Yep.
And then you said, "I own that song."
A piece.
A piece, right?
Yep.
And then you said, "Which means I own a piece of this song, which is number one in the airwaves right now."
Yes.
And I remember that smile that you just gave, which is one of the best smiles that I know. That smile, just you and I hanging out, listening to your accomplishment, right? The biggest recording artist in the world, playing through your speakers, and you are part of that song. And that smile that came over you was, really profound, breathtaking, right? And it was just one of those moments, that I was so happy for you. So talk to me about that song if you can. Like, how did that come about?
It's a great song to teach people who aren't familiar with music publishing and songs and songwriters how valuable a song is and how it could be a gift that keeps on giving, right? So Right Said Fred recorded "I'm Too Sexy" probably in the 80s, right? Spirit bought it. That was bought before I arrived at Spirit, probably 2009. I arrived 2011. They bought that catalog, which came with that song. And yeah, that year was like 2017, you're about right, 2018, 2017. We get a call, that I can say it now because it's out in the world. Back then, we couldn't say a word because it was Taylor Swift, and you have to respect that. But Taylor Swift, thanks to Taylor, she decided...
You couldn't say a word about what?
About the fact that she was even in a recording studio at the time.
Yeah.
Better yet, she was going to sample the song "I'm Too Sexy," but she paid tribute to that song and she put it on that song. We didn't even know the name of the song. We just knew that she was going to use that song. And the way it works in our world, if that's a sample, and if somebody wants to sample our songs, they have to call us, and we have to then determine what we think we should get as a percentage of that song, the publishing.
How much of that sample is
being used?
Right.
And if
So
it's
out of
used,
the whole
the
song,
more it's used, the bigger
yeah,
the percentage.
right.
So at the end
So
of
if that backbeat was going the whole song, that might be 30, 40%.
Yeah, so with Taylor Swift, you got to give her a discount. It's Taylor Swift, So I think we got like 20 or 25% of that song for the use.
It's a heavy backbeat.
And we didn't even know what the song was. I'll never forget. We didn't even know if it was a single. We didn't know anything. I had a feeling based off of how the negotiations went that it was going to be her first single, but we didn't know. And I'll never forget.
And they won't let you hear it either.
No. They had to. They didn't want us to, but they had to.
Okay.
We wouldn't. We would have walked away. Like, you have to let us hear how you're. We have to make sure it's obviously Taylor Swift. She's going to use it properly, but we have to hear it and we have to know what we're selling. It's kind of, for us, unheard of to say to somebody, "Oh, sure, use I'm Too Sexy and pay me 5%." No.
And who wrote that? And Right Said Fred.
Yeah, they did.
They
Both
did,
of them. Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And
so
did they get involved?
They did actually. Taylor, I think, reached out to them and thanked them. They were and they have a little interest, so they were thrilled.
Sure.
So
From a song from the 80s being talked about now, right?
So the funny thing is now we don't know if it's a single, what the song is, and wound up
Such
being
a hit, man. Huh?
Yeah, it was the first single, global smash hit. I mean, it doubled the size of the catalog, just that one song. 25% of it doubled whatever we were making before that song was released.
Wow.
But that song,
Wow.
so it's an amazing, people love to sample it. And it's a gift that keeps on giving, I say, because then shortly thereafter that, Drake did that song, Way Too Sexy. Well, we own, I don't know, you can look it up, it's public knowledge, but 25, 30% of that song, I think, off the top of my
Same
head.
backbeat or lyrics?
Backbeat,
Yeah.
And there was one other big sample. I mean, that's a song that just all of a sudden got a lot of action. So we love those kinds of songs.
Sometimes.
But Taylor Swift is always, thank Taylor Swift for that gift.
Well, I think the world thanks her for a lot of things.
Yeah, I
That
know.
talent is just iconic. We talk about songwriters, and there's always that funny list of one-hit wonders, right? But I tell people sometimes, I'm like, sometimes those one-hit wonders, they didn't just write a song, they wrote the song.
Right.
And they don't have to work ever again because of publishing, right?
Yeah.
Aren't there some songs out there that just
I mean, because not only is it samples, but then somebody could cover it.
right?
Like we own the song, or we represent the song, Africa by Toto. And David Page is our
I
client.
play that in my cover bet all the time.
Right.
It's always a request.
David Page is our client. He wrote a good portion of that song. Amazing talent, guy, person, human. And the band Weezer went in and did a cover of it.
That's right. In the
another lifeline.
the Teal album.
And what it does is now you have another
By the
whole
way, the
song.
Teal album, phenomenal cover album.
And now you have a new song altogether by Weezer that you own.
Yeah.
And then it also lifts the original song, because now people hear it there and they're like, I don't know this Toto. These young kids maybe, and they'll go listen to Toto, be like, wow, this is a great version too.
Yeah.
Stream away.
I play in this cover band, Waza Nation.
Know all about it.
And when I play on Saturday night here in New York City, and the place is mobbed, and the average age, late 20s, early 30s, and I'm playing songs like Africa, The Stones. They know all the words. Journey. Mm-hmm. They know all the words, right? And I know when we played Africa, it was the first time it was actually resurrected in my mind because of the Teal album, right? And then I'm like, let's play that. Everyone knew the words.
Yeah.
These are kids in front of me knew all the words. And I'm like, man, that's the power of music, man. No doubt. All right, let's leave off with ambition. You had a lot of ambition, right? You had a lot of big dreams, right? That you're fulfilling every single day. What are you, a mentor? What are you telling a young person about those dreams? How to keep those dreams in check and never lose sight of those goals? What advice are you giving the young?
It's funny because
youth.
It seems like I'm doing that once a week these days.
It's okay.
Like a lot of friends and
Gotta give it
family
back.
say, "Hey, could you give my nephew advice? My son, my cousin, whatever, my own niece, my own nephews." And I think the most important thing I always tell people is like, you can't be afraid to work your ass off. Like you got to work really hard, and you got to be consistent at it. You got to be focused. You can't be afraid. But if you're lazy, you're done. Like don't just do something else. But if you want to be successful, and and you're not fortunate enough to have, DNA with a lot of money in it, like you got to work hard.
How do we get that?
It's so simple.
How do
by
we
the
get
way,
the DNA with a lot of
I'm
money?
being yeah, I know, but it's not complicated. Like if you work hard and you keep at it,
Good things happen.
you're gonna do good.
Yeah. Just
But
show
some
up.
people, like I've witnessed a lot of people who come out of like these Ivy League schools and they think they're entitled, but they don't work hard.
Yeah.
And most of the time,
I've
they're
heard
the
that
ones who
story
don't do so
time
well.
and time again. They are brilliant. They might be very, very smart, but you'll take someone from a state school who's going to work their
butt
ass off.
There's no doubt
I've
about it.
heard that story time.
I mean, I love hiring elite athletes. There's nothing better. We just hired down in Nashville a Division I baseball player, right? And I met him for the first time. I could tell he's going to kill it
Kill it.
because he's a hard worker, but he's so focused,
Part of a team, knows
And
exactly
he knows
what
exactly.
discipline is.
Discipline is so key.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law played, he was a goalie at Hopkins, And for lacrosse, so focused, so disciplined. What he can do, whatever he'll be great at whatever he does.
Yeah.
Because that's the mentality, you know.
Yeah,
and that's what you need. Even if you're not an athlete, you can still do it.
Your nephew is a beast.
That's his son. Yeah.
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 That's right.
Tar Heel.
Tar Heel and his teammate
Michigan
Wolverine, right?
Yep.
That's amazing. And I enjoy mentoring young people, but you got to show up, man. You got to show up. You got to work hard, right? I have one of my next door neighbor, Harvard Business School, and he comes in sometimes and tells me stories. He goes, I'm so tired of the Ivy League privilege. And yes, there's something to be said about that, and I hope one day my kids can go to Ivy League.
Yeah.
But the work ethic is that kid that went to St. John's, that went to state school, they're gonna bust your ass for you, and they know and appreciate when Jon Singer calls, right? You just hit the major leagues, and you don't want to get sent back down to the minor leagues.
There's no doubt.
That's fantastic. All right, it's time for my favorite segment, Moving the Change, brought to you by NOBULL, a footwear brand designed for training daily life and supporting you in your pursuit of physical, mental, and emotional strength. And we get to ask our guest, what do you do every day to get a little better? So, Jon, I know you love your training, but think about your daily activity. What do you do? What's that non-negotiable that you do that you have to have every day?
So just
move it forward.
The first thing you're going to make fun of me is my tea. Need my fresh ginger tea.
Only on social media will we make fun of you, not here.
But definitely exercise. I mean,
Is it green tea?
It's ginger tea. Fresh ginger, though. Fresh ginger. I make a very special batch of tea.
Well played.
Simon Cowell taught me how to make a fresh ginger tea.
Oh, let's talk about that. Let's talk about Simon Cowell teaching you about that. What's the context of that?
That was quick. I met him a few years ago, and we had tea together, and it was fresh ginger. I'm like, this is great. So anyway.
And I had tea with you. I'm telling my future.
There you go. There you go. Exercise. You know, I try to do it almost every morning, you know, whether it's cardio or lifting, and a lot of it I learned from you, you know.
Thank you.
The funny thing is, to this day, when I'm like working out, there's virtual Marty in my head saying, work harder. Was it dumb as ox, smart as bull or something?
Dumb like donkey, strong like...
That's it. I just picture that because a lot of what I do today is what I learned from you. The other things are very simple, like good morning to my daughter because she's in Miami in college.
Love that.
And then good night.
Family first.
And then good night to my daughter, you know, before I go to bed because she's down there, you know. And then everything falls into place from there. But those are the keys.
And we're so excited to set you up with some NOBULL gear, an unbelievable company. And I'm so proud that they're our sponsor, and you're going to love their sneakers for training, for daily activity, and some of their apparel is fantastic. So thank you for that.
I appreciate that. I'm excited.
100%. You're well deserved. Hello, everyone. Exclusively for Game Recognizes Game listeners, our sponsor, I'm so proud to be in partnership with NOBULL, giving our listeners a 30% discount code for all their products that will help you achieve all your goals. Please go to nobullproject.com/game to receive your 30% discount. That's www.nobullproject.com/GAME. Okay, now we do another fun segment called a 2-minute drill. Someone give me 2 minutes on the clock. Jon, this is where we give you these 30,000-foot questions. Just a little heavier questions, a little deeper questions to help you reflect a little bit. We won't get too deep. We only got 2 minutes.
Okay.
But they're fun. You ready?
Yep.
All right. You got the privilege of sitting here with 18-year-old Jon Singer. What are you telling him?
That's a good question. I tell him, pay attention at the table with your mother when she's teaching you.
That's fantastic.
But I tell him, like, keep going. Like, you did a good job getting me to where I am today. So just keep going, and stay out of trouble. But whatever you're doing, it's working. So if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Is that fair?
That's very fair. When did you feel you made it?
I'll be honest with you. It's a good question, right? Like, for me, I went to a small college. nobody recruited from this college. It was Glassboro State College. They actually changed the name to Rowan College of New Jersey right after I graduated. In May, I graduated in July.
Rowan College, New Jersey, chairman of Spirit Music Group. Doesn't matter where you go.
Be nice.
So work hard.
Rowan's
work hard.
great. I love growing.
Oh, fantastic. But what I'm saying to you is small college, not Ivy League, and it doesn't matter. Put the work in, put the effort in. It happens. Good things happen to great people and hard work.
So I had to go find the job. Like, I didn't have resources like some of these big colleges may have, right? So I hustled and I somehow got into public accounting, which is what I wanted to do, through a back door. You know, I had to like go and do some data processing for a year in order just to make it up on the audit staff. So that was an accomplishment. But I think like the biggest accomplishment, you know, aside from obviously what we talked about at the beginning of this segment about Spirit and Lyric, is I was at Universal. I left for a minute because I got recruited to Chris Blackwell's new company, Palm, and then Universal recruited me back to work at Decca, and then within a year, at the age of I think I was like 29 years old, they made me the CFO of Decca Label Group, which was a division of Universal Music Group, the biggest music company in the world, and that was like wow. Like I think between you and I had a few tears in my eyes when they told me that. You know, I was like shaking like. I'm 29 years old. I mean, my goal was to be a CFO when I was in high school, say in college, and I accomplished that at 29. Better yet, at the #1 music company in the world. So I think, you know, that was it. But there's so many, you know, and you know what I also tell those kids when we talked about before, work hard, never get comfortable. Once you get comfortable, you're dead.
Yeah, and I'll expand on that. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
Last question. Mr. Music Man, favorite song of all time?
I'm going to say it, and it's Pink Floyd's Comfortably Numb. Probably.
Wow. Strong.
Probably.
Wow.
It's one of my favorites. Other than that, it would be Bruce Springsteen, and a very rare song of Bruce Springsteen's, Downbound Train.
Beautiful song. I
Great
love that
song.
song. Great song.
So,
it has that
I'm a little upset with a little Pink Floyd and some of their politics. Not all of theirs, but one of theirs.
I get it. Yeah.
So, but it was. I grew up to it. But Bruce, I'm from Jersey. Freehold's the town over. We live by Bruce. You know.
How can you not? It's in your blood.
Yeah.
Right. That's fantastic. Mine, by the way, is Mark Cohen, Walking in Memphis.
Well, we represented that when I was at Decca. We did a deal with Mark Cohen, and when you said One Hit Wonder, he had a few other songs, but that's the first one that came to my mind. When you said that was a song that came to my mind.
Amazing.
It's funny you said that.
Yeah.
He's got a great story too.
Great story. And that song talks about that story.
Yes.
It's fantastic. Unbelievable. One more hit. You get a gift.
I love gifts. Wow.
Jon, it's an honor for us to present you with AposHealth. I know what you think it looks like, but this is actually a foot-worn medical device that's clinically proven to decrease knee pain and decrease one of your issues, back pain. Why is that? Because this is custom made to you, and due to the chronic inflammation of both knee and back pain, the muscles that you need for support, for stability, for confidence, right? They just don't fire. And by customizing it to how you walk and your gait, it forces those muscles you need, okay, for stability, support, and ultimately confidence to fire and do that for you. And I'm telling you, this company has over 150,000 patients with proven results, avoiding knee surgery, avoiding back surgery, and it's an honor to give you a pair of these AposHealth.
They look really nice. Apos. Thank you, AposHealth. Thank you, Marty.
You're very welcome.
These are great.
And best of all,
you can actually adjust them. Wow.
Yeah, they'll be adjusted for you, custom made. But more importantly, you only have to wear them no more than an hour a day. This is a game changer. That's why we're working with them.
Nice. Thank you so much. That's awesome.
Jon, not only am I so privileged and honored to have you here, I'm proud to call you a friend. Love you, man.
Love you
Thank you
too.
so much.
Thank you, Marty.